Hi guys, welcome back to the channel. Today we're going to be talking about things that you should be mindful about when you're thinking about your neurodiverse loved one or yourself as a neurodivergent person. So this is a pretty broad topic. I'm basing this topic off of the third video I ever made online, which was this. And I made this video with the IEP process in mind. At this time, I was working at the school and I was developing IEPs all the time. And in order for caregivers, educators, administration even, to feel empowered during those meetings when you are advocating for neurodivergent people, I thought, well, let me make a quick post about things to keep in mind when you are in that process. So let's get into it, right? How can we make life easier for our loved ones who process things differently? Most of the time, these people will have individual education plans, or if they're adults, they're going to have meetings with care staff, and you have to feel well equipped to know what to say for them. So the first thing that we're discussing is best work schedule. A lot of people have varying alertness, varying attention, and they're not the most alert at certain times of day. So some people work best first thing in the morning. Some people work best after lunch when they've gotten some energy. Some people are really tired after lunch after they've gotten some energy. Some people are really alert once they've had their caffeine source. And paying attention to the times of day or the activities that bring you the most energy in life is really important, not only for you, but if you're caring for a neurodivergent loved one, you might notice that they perform with more attention, are more attentive in therapies that take place in the afternoon or maybe after school, whatever the case. That's an important thing to note. Now, to be realistic, in the school setting, you probably won't get to choose the time of day that your loved one will get therapy services. It's really what that therapist can fit into their schedule, and they have such a big caseload, so please be patient with them. But it is something that you can note, even if it's not a direct accommodation or modification. It's something that you can let those people know, so that the teachers know too, not even just the therapy supports. So questions to ask yourself when designing a schedule for work, therapy, even play. Are you more attentive in the morning or in the afternoons? Do you have more energy before or after lunch? Do you have anxiety in the mornings? Would you benefit from gradually entering a workday, perhaps through movement breaks, showering, journaling, or reading? So that's an interesting point. What is going to help you transition into the mindset of getting something done? Do you think that a visual schedule would benefit you? Some people really like to journal their to-do list, what they're going to do that day. Do you think doing something that you really like to do before going into that more structured activity would make you feel motivated? There's so many questions that come up with this. If you ever need help brainstorming these things, you can contact me on my website, link in bio, www.support-the-spectrum.com, and we can definitely think of what is best for you or your loved one. Okay, the next thing is best workspace. The space in which you are putting yourself in, the environment in which you're putting yourself in when you need to achieve something is so important. I remember being in college and people really benefiting from going to the library or going to the cafe, and I just could not work in those environments. I think it was the visual distraction of it all. I really liked also having a whiteboard in front of me so I could write everything down that I needed to and physically write. So those private study rooms, or if we found an empty lecture room or something, me and my friends would pretty much go there, and I found that that was better for me. Just a personal example. But in the case of someone who is needing to be in a structured activity at school or at work or just in therapies perhaps, what would be the best place for them? Is the spot that you have them set up in, is it too much light? Is it too much like fluorescent light? Sometimes that really bothers people. Does the space have auditory distractions? Perhaps, oh my gosh, a personal memory just came to me too. When I was working at the school, they gave us a room. It was really a closet. Okay, I'm not gonna shake the school right now. That could be another video. But we were in a room that was right under the gym. And so you could hear kids running the whole time that we're trying to give an assessment. And, giving assessment to non-speaking people is also it could be another video. We'll put a pin in that. But that space obviously was not optimal for assessment or optimal for learning, and that's something to consider. Also, when we're considering neurodiverse affirming practices, we are typically in the speech therapy world following that client's lead, following that loved one's lead. So if they want to be in a certain area, that's where we're going to do therapy. I have a client right now who they really enjoy being in the second floor of their group home, and they do not want to come downstairs and sit at a table and do structured stuff most of the time. And in the beginning, it took a lot of convincing for the group home staff not to force them to transition downstairs. And I said, no, I'm not making them do anything they don't want to do. I can do anything in any place and insert language into it and teach that non-speaking person language with modeling without expectations in any environment that they feel comfortable in, right? So this is really important. Important for treatment, important for assessment, important for their level of comfort. All of these things to consider is all about reducing anxiety in the brain. Why? Because when we have anxiety in our brain, we are unable to learn something new. This is a controversial statement that shouldn't be a controversial statement. People say, well, I was taught things with an anxious mind and I learned to do it. Sure, you learned to react and perform in a survival state. Sorry, that's kind of rude. But you did. That's what was happening in your brain. You felt the pressure to do it. You learned what was expected of you in a survival state. But with repetition, you truly learned. It wasn't because you had anxious thoughts and anxiety put into you that you learned something. You learned it through the repetition. And if you want to do something in a neurodiversity affirming way, you're going to do it in a way that causes as little anxiety in that neurodivergent person's brain as possible. Even, neurotypical people, they don't deserve to be anxious when learning something. So hopefully that isn't a controversial statement. It's just, I get those comments sometimes. We learned doing da-da-da. We learned by people yelling at us. We learned by people smacking our knuckles. And it's like, okay, you survived that, and I'm really sorry that you did, but we don't have to replicate that in the future. Some questions to ask yourself when considering best workspace. When designing your workspace, are you more sensitive to light? Is it distracting? Do you benefit from having a to-do list? Or does having things written out bring you anxiety? Oh man, that could be true too. If you have so many things to do, it might bring you anxiety to see it all. Also, I know that with people who have ADHD, they have this cognitive pattern of adding things to their to-do list, which gives them task paralysis, initiation paralysis, meaning they think, oh man, I should really shower. Well, I should probably work out before I shower. Well, if I'm going to work out, then I should make something to eat. Oh, I can't even think about getting to the kitchen and doing dishes. I should make a coffee first. They keep adding things to their list to get to their ultimate goal, which is to take a shower. And it might cause them to stay where they are in a paralysis state. So it really is based on what is best for you, for your loved one, as is all things on this channel. Now we're gonna get into what is the best learning plan for you or your learner. So this whole concept has a lot to do with what supports is gonna help you have a good prognosis for achieving whatever goal you want to achieve. So, is it helpful to work with someone who provides verbal support or body doubles for you? Body doubling is this concept of doing something with someone right next to you, whether you're doing the same activity or doing different activities. It's just important for some people to feel like they have the support of someone else with them, even if that person's not saying anything. It's almost just a visual reminder that you are working on this task with that person. Do you work better alone? What kind of learner are you? Are you a visual learner? Are you a textual learner? Do you have to try and fail as a learner? That's me. I like to start doing something, mess up, keep going, that kind of stuff. And I'm a visual learner too. And I think most of the time I do work better alone. I love collaborating. I think that it really helps me expand my mind. But at least when I was working in the clinic with a bunch of therapists, I often would be the one to go to a whole separate room, a whole separate office to do my work because I can't have auditory distractions. I will not get my work done. I'll want to talk to you the whole time and get to know you. So I just have to know that about myself. Do you enjoy the use of visuals, videos, or would you rather someone show you? Oh my goodness, yes. So the whole reason that I ended up going to the University of Duquesne was for this reason, that they have an on-site clinic. And as soon as I saw that, I was like, I'm going here if I get in. And thank goodness I did, because having someone just visually show me or being able to observe other students doing therapy really helped me with my confidence a lot. Another question is, do you find listening to music distracting or meditative or helpful with the process of getting something done? It really depends on the learner you are, on the task you're doing, if you're able to switch and do two things at once. Because we actually, as a human species, multitasking, doing two things at once, that doesn't actually happen in the brain. You're actually just constantly switching from thing to thing. That's just a fun brain fact. In an IEP meeting, in a meeting with your therapist, in a meeting with work for work accommodations, you should have this general idea thought through. Because here is an example. Let's say your best learning plan is that you get sent an email with exactly the topics for the meeting you're going to have that day before the meeting. That's an accommodation you absolutely can ask for and you are protected by the ADA for. And that's because you are a visual learner and you need predictability in order to be prepared for a meeting or task. So that's something to consider when you're thinking about best learning plan. Would you need training modules, let's say you're in a work situation, that are videos with visuals? Would you need a mentor? These are things to consider as an adult neurodivergent person, even an adult neurotypical person, and things that you absolutely can advocate for yourself. In any kind of meeting, you have to think about, are you a better worker alone, or do you like to be with somebody? And that's definitely something to consider in school, work, anywhere, because if you really are trying to get stuff done, you want to know. Another huge part of this, something that I really have wanted to talk about for a while, and I've made a few videos on processing time. Processing time is part of this. The best learning plan for you is the type of learning plan that gives you the time that your brain needs. So let's talk about processing time. There have been many studies to show that neurodivergent people have processing profiles that differ from neurotypical people. And I think anyone familiar with neurodivergent people know this as well. In certain areas, they're actually faster with their processing, like processing visual input. And in some areas, they need extended processing time, like when they are processing faces and facial recognition, expression recognition, and also, I believe it was textual stimuli that they were presented with. And in these cases, we have to be mindful that people need more processing time, but we also need to be mindful that people are competent and they know what you're trying to get them to achieve, but they just need time to transition or absorb, process, store that information. And I'm going to give you a real life example. I have a client and they love the hot tub. They love going in the hot tub, right? It's really challenging for them to transition out of the hot tub. They want to stay there. But it doesn't mean that they don't know that when I'm using all done and when I'm semi-closing the hot tub, that they know they're supposed to get out of the hot tub, right? If I were to presume that that person doesn't know that language and try to coax them out of the hot tub with food or try to physically pull them, God forbid, I have seen that happen, I immediately shut it down. I would be presuming that that person doesn't understand language, doesn't understand visual forms of language, doesn't understand intention, doesn't pick up on subtle cues, and has to be forced to do something. And I refuse to do that. So I have had some challenging conversations because a lot of approaches when it comes to transitions, it bleeds a lot into behavioral therapy and etc. It can bleed into other therapies as well, but I will not force someone to do anything because that is not how you learn language. So going back to the example, I put my foot down. I said, I am not forcing them to get out. I know they know what I'm trying to say because I showed it on the speech generating device. I held up the towel. I partially closed the hot tub. I turned off the jets. That person, even though they're non-speaking, knows exactly what we need them to do. It was also really cold. Like, we needed to get them in the house, you know. Otherwise, I'd just let them stay there. But it was necessary. And it was also necessary to show the support staff that they could do it. That you should be presuming that that person can do it. And that they're independent, you know. The best thing for learning is to have that person be as independent as possible. Say it again. The best thing for your learner is independence. Does that take a lot of time? Yes. Did it take 15 minutes for that person to transition out of the hot tub? Absolutely. And what happened after 15 minutes? They started reaching their arms out, touching the stairs. They started to take what they had in the hot tub, put it outside the hot tub, and then they independently walked out of the hot tub. And I'm sitting there gloating. I didn't actually gloat, but I just, in that moment, was like, I knew you could do it. I knew you could do it. Because I gave them the processing time they needed. That processing time is not up to me. It's not up to you. It's not up to the support staff. It's up to them. Now, I know that that is not a realistic thing every moment of your life. You sometimes don't have 15 minutes to wait for that person to do something independently. I really do understand that, especially in the school setting. Well, I should say, especially in life. You know, sometimes you have to get out the door. Sometimes you have to get to the next class, whatever the case. Transitions are particularly hard for neurodivergent people. And so what I say is, if you can take the time to do it independently, please do it. If you have the time, if you're not doing anything, please do it. And you will see that the amount of time it takes will get smaller and smaller as you promote independence. Getting the amount of processing time you need on paper for work meetings, IEPs, whatever the case, is essential because it will help manage the expectations of the people working with you or your loved one. So for example, if it takes 10 minutes for your learner to transition from one class to another, you can put in their IEP that they should be prepped with their AAC system or visual timer or whatever the case, 10 minutes before a class period is going to end, that they have 10 more minutes 10 more minutes. Or if we're talking about work accommodation meetings, you can put down that you need at least an hour of time before a spontaneous meeting is called in order to mentally prepare or prepare notes or whatever. So your workplace knows, okay, we can't just spontaneously give something to this person. It's going to cause distress. It's going to cause them to be not productive. You're not going to have the result that they want, because that's not how your brain works, okay? So please don't feel any pressure or feel anxious about asking for those things. But if you do, contact me. Again, on my website, link in bio, I've helped so many people get work accommodations. The thing is that they're nervous to ask for it, right? And I would be too. If I was actually in that position, I would be nervous to ask for it too. But as someone who's just advocating for them, I'm like, you're protected by the ADA. You can do it. We'll come up with sample emails. We'll go through every potential accommodation that you can ask for. It's good stuff. So definitely schedule a consultation with me if you need it anyways. But I'm so passionate about processing time because people don't have the patience for it, but it's necessary. So we'll move on to the next thing. Best way to collaborate with others. So whether you're at the school doing group activities or you're at work and you're on a team, there are certain situations where there's certain jobs that you don't need to collaborate with others, but that's very rare. You most likely will need to collaborate with others at some point. So some questions to consider are, do you find it difficult or hard to see things from others' perspectives? Do you become dysregulated when plans aren't going how you expect them to? Does it help you to communicate these feelings, or can you work on them by yourself? So, do you find it difficult or hard to see things from others' perspectives? This is something that is pretty common when I'm working with my autistic clients particularly. They sometimes will forget that other people can feel dysregulated, or that others' ideas could be the quote-unquote right way to go about things because it didn't come from them or their autonomy, right? And there's nothing wrong with feeling that way. Being aware and admitting that to yourself is the first step at working on those things. And so a lot of times we'll do perspective taking tasks, talking about, well, what do you think that person felt in that moment? And why do you think they felt that way? And is there any way that we could have done something differently to make them feel more comfortable, or whatever the case? You know, noting this in an IEP or a work meeting, that this might be a difficulty for you, a weakness for you, is being vulnerable, it's being honest, and it's something that you absolutely can work on. And then the last one I have for today is best ways to regulate. So I personally have a whole lesson plan and curriculum for teaching regulation. That stuff is also available on my website. And I do a lot of therapy specifically on the executive functioning of emotional regulation. So I made sure to put this in here because it is so necessary when talking about accommodations, right? It's so necessary to know what your personal signs of dysregulation are, and know that dysregulation is absolutely not your fault. It's our stupid caveman brains that have evolved to be this way, you know? You never have to feel shame about what causes dysregulation, but your goal might be to independently regulate, you know? And how are you going to get there? Well, you need to co-regulate first. So for IEP meetings or work accommodations, you might say, I need X, Y, and Z sensory item to be able to activate my senses, take energy away from my emotional and survival brains, and regulate myself. And I might need a half an hour to do that. I might need an hour. I might need 5 minutes. It just depends on the person. So knowing the strategies that help regulate you the best, if it's sensory activation items, knowing exactly what they are, advocating for yourself that they are present with you at all times because you never know what's going to dysregulate you, letting people know if you need support of someone else or if you can do it alone. These things are very, very important to note when you are talking about advocating for yourself and choosing what is best for you to succeed. So again, today's question was, how can we make life easier for ourselves or our loved ones with processing differences when learning new things? Before we focus on learning language or other skills, we first must use what we know about executive functioning and processing to create the perfect environment for success. Because neurodivergence can present in people in an unlimited number of ways, it is hard to say exactly how processing differences will manifest in you or your loved ones. The best way to figure out how neurodivergent people are affected by their differences in processing is through trial and error. And over time, you will learn what the best environment, best prompts, best supports are for you or your loved one. And I am so willing and happy to help you with that whole process, as I've done a lot of trial and error in my experience as a speech language pathologist, and I would love to share it with you if you need that help. Again, you can reach me on my website, www.support-the-spectrum.com. The link is in my bio. There's a way to contact me from there. And even if you don't want to schedule something, if you just have a question that you would like me to talk about at length in one of these videos, please feel free to submit them there, and follow @Support the Spectrum for neurodiversity affirming care and the science behind it.